The process was relatively straightforward, yet it was almost too simple. Had she been aware of the ease with which it could be accomplished, she likely would have initiated it much sooner. She was perplexed by her own delay in attempting it. Alex extended her body in a languid manner on her lover's bed, turning onto her right side. She arose and proceeded to the bathroom, where she activated the shower, adjusted the temperature, and entered the shower stall. She applied soap to her body, taking care to avoid her recently injured area, and was on the verge of turning off the water when Trey entered the room and she turned off the water while they switched places. 15 minutes later, the couple was ready to leave. The man leaned toward her, but the woman pulled away slightly so that his kiss would not smear the lipstick on her newly painted lips. She warned him, "Let's stick to the plan," and then suggested that they continue this activity for an extended period of time. He replied, "I'm sorry," and she responded, "You're right." She smiled radiantly for at least the first month of this new phase of her life. The events proceeded precisely as she had planned. She had not anticipated any deviation from the plan. Indeed, she had expected the situation to persist for a longer duration. Some might categorize the interactions between Alex and Trey on Wednesday afternoon as an affair. However, she deemed this classification to be overly simplistic. Alex holds a profound affection for Trey and views their Wednesday meetings as a profound and meaningful connection. Alexis Temple was not seeking romantic attachment when she encountered it for the second time. She had been happily married to Chris Temple for 12 years when Alexis, the director of human resources at Parkfield Hospital, and Trey, the new marketing representative for Riley Gordon, the hospital's public relations company, met at an executive board meeting at Parkfield Hospital 4 months earlier. Trey was dressed in a charcoal gray pinstriped suit that was tailored to his athletic body of 5 feet 3 inches and 102 pounds. His brown hair is wavy and thick, and his big brown eyes flash when he speaks. When she looks at him, she feels a tingling sensation. Over the following months, they conversed on several occasions. Alex eventually recognized that her feelings for Trey were more than superficial. Referring to their relationship as an affair would be inaccurate. She had no reason to apologize or feel guilty about it. On Saturday afternoon, Chris Temple went to the mailbox and retrieved several items, including 2 envelopes from the state of Indiana. License plate stickers and printed registration papers for 2023. Chris opened the envelope addressed to him, affixed the new sticker to his license plate, and placed the registration in the glove compartment of his car. He then opened the envelope addressed to his wife, placed a new sticker on her license plate, and attempted to put her registration down in the glove compartment. However, the glove compartment was locked. Chris was perplexed by this, as he had never before seen his wife lock her glove compartment. He thought to himself, "Who the hell locks their glove compartment?" as he walked. He returned to the house and retrieved his wife's car keys from the shelf. He opened the glove compartment and placed the new registration inside. He closed the compartment and was about to exit when he had a sudden recollection. He opened the glove compartment once more and discovered the vehicle's owner's manual, the previous 3 registrations, and a cell phone. The latter item was the only one that surprised him at that point. He muttered to himself. Chris was aware that his wife was upstairs in the shower, as had been her custom. For the past 6 months, she had returned home approximately 20 minutes earlier than usual on Saturdays, after her workout. As was her custom, she had gone directly to the shower. He proceeded to turn on his phone and wait for it to fully load before examining the call history. Since she did not anticipate being contacted, she did not clear the call history. There was a brief list of calls and a lengthy list of texts from a single individual, identified as Trey. Before even reviewing those texts, Chris realized that is 1:33. Upon reading the messages, Chris was undeterred in his decision. He powered off his phone, placed it back in the glove compartment, and locked it again. He then returned his wife's keys to the coat rack. He listened for a moment, hearing the shower still running upstairs. He proceeded to mow the yard and write a report. Chris had learned from reports that his wife had been engaged in an ongoing affair with Trey for approximately a year. He recalled that her late Wednesday nights at the office had commenced around that time. It appeared that she would take a long lunch break and then add it to the end of the day to make time to work. Approximately 6 months ago, based on the available correspondence, it was determined that Saturday mornings had been incorporated into the schedule of activities. Chris recalled that this coincided with the commencement of his wife's classes at the local gym. He was overcome with emotion, and he forcefully struck both hands against the handle of the lawnmower, causing the sound of the mower to be heard from the second-floor bedroom. Alex smiled, as she was aware that Chris enjoyed mowing the yard for both physical exercise and aesthetic purposes. As she prepared to enjoy the remainder of Saturday, she acknowledged her good fortune in having an adoring husband and a youthful romantic partner. It had been nearly a year since Alex had expanded her intimate life to include Trey, and everything was proceeding as she had anticipated. Thanks to meticulous planning and effective organization, her life had never been more gratifying. She was blessed with a devoted husband, 2 exceptional children, a fulfilling career, and a 29-year-old. Her second husband provided emotional and physical intimacy that she believed she lacked in her marriage. While there were periods when she felt depressed, she generally felt that she was living a full life, including a romantic relationship with a second partner. In fact, she had achieved her life goals. She did not believe that she was taking the easy way out by pursuing a fulfilling life. This day, in particular, meant being able to engage in sexual intercourse with 2 different men, which she found lustful and always resulted in she achieved remarkable climaxes when she managed to persuade her husband to engage in sexual intercourse with her in the evening, following his sexual encounter with her earlier in the day with Trey. Alex always took a shower and cleaned herself thoroughly, so she had no problem if Chris initiated sexual intercourse with her on evenings. In fact, after she made sure her husband could not discover that she had engaged in sexual intercourse earlier in the day, she began initiating sexual intercourse herself to enhance the excitement derived from her own transgression. Alex and Trey's relationship was, in fact, one of love, not merely lust. The young man Trey was warm and intelligent, and his interests differed from those of her husband, which she felt made her life more fulfilling. Trey was aware from the outset that she was married and loved her husband, but she had sufficient love to include Trey in her affections as well as in her sexual relationships. Trey is 13 years her husband's junior and more strongly willed, both personally and physically. He has well-developed abdominal muscles and approximately 14 pounds of extra muscle on his body. The nature of their sexual relationships differed as well. With Chris, they typically engaged in slow, passionate lovemaking, whereas with Trey, it was more intense. Furthermore, the sexual encounter with the 2 men that Saturday was less emotionally intense than usual. Chris had fallen asleep earlier that evening, which allowed Alex to engage in sexual activity with Trey. Upon entering the house after mowing, Chris appeared somewhat fatigued. In fact, he was pleased that he had not vomited when Alex initiated sexual intercourse. Chris, the vice president of finance at a medium-sized tool and die company, arrived at work at 7 o'clock every morning. At 8 o'clock, he placed a capsule into his coffee maker and accessed his email inbox. The plant officially commenced operations at 8 o'clock. 15, he proceeded to the office of the production manager, Bob Casey, with whom he was acquainted and who had divorced his wife of 15 years 5 years ago. "Do you have a few minutes for something personal?" he inquired. When Casey nodded, Chris entered and closed the door behind him. Casey considered the situation and, 5 minutes later, had received the full account from Chris and was on the telephone with his divorce attorney, who was an old college friend of his. Casey's friend had hosted Chris at his off. On the same day, Alex was taken aback when she was presented with her divorce papers. The following Wednesday, at the hospital, upon returning from her date with Trey, she was astonished to learn that her husband had been discontented in their marriage. She was particularly struck by the coincidence of the papers being delivered to her at a moment when she was attempting to reconcile her thoughts. The prospect of Chris becoming aware of her relationship with Trey had not even crossed her mind. Once she had regained her composure, Alex contacted her husband to inquire about the reason for his behavior. She was astonished to hear him ask her why she had done something wrong. Given that he had been engaged in an extramarital affair for approximately a year, she was perplexed by his question. This was the second time in a few minutes that she had been taken aback. She continued to sob, but she was unable to articulate a response to Chris. Consequently, he terminated the conversation as she had anticipated. Alex was waiting for him outside. Upon his return to the house, rather than staying late at work as usual, would Mr. McCoy not resent him for failing to make up the hours for that lengthy lunch? Chris inquired as he entered the house from the garage. "I love you, honey." "You know I do." "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Trey. I felt it was best for everyone." "But you and Trey are not everyone." "I am, too. You and Trey are not the only ones involved in this situation." I am, too, Alex replied. In a subdued tone, I feel compelled to elucidate. Chris interjected with a derisive snort. I chose not to inform you about Trey because I was aware that you would not be able to comprehend this situation and would likely mishandle it, as you are currently doing. She began, I am causing problems. I am deeply sorry for the confusion I am causing. Could you please clarify what I am inadvertently disrupting? Chris responded with a vehement exclamation, I was not. Chris, I am seeking a relationship with you. This relationship developed organically, and I am pleased with its formation. Trey is an exceptional individual whom you will undoubtedly appreciate once you have had the opportunity to get to know him better. This relationship encompasses far more than mere infidelity or sexual desire. It is a bond that transcends lust and encompasses a depth of affection that I have for you. Chris and I were unable to give up Trey to the same extent that I was unable to give up you. However, we are married, which precludes the possibility of loving two men simultaneously. Chris objected, stating that being married does not automatically negate one's capacity for emotional attachment or love. He asserted that Trey is his first love, while I am his second. Consequently, I am capable of loving more than one man at a time. This is not a question of choosing between one or the other. Alex then stated that Trey is aware that I already have a full life. He is willing to be content with the limited time I am able to devote to him and to you and your family. I have not taken anything away from you and the children. I have simply added something for myself in addition to you and the children. Trey is not your husband, he is an interventionist. He should be grateful for any time he gets from you, but I am your husband and you have 2 children. All that time should be given to us. Chris said, I love my life the way it is now and I do not want to change anything. I need all of you. Alex said, I don't want a divorce. However, I did not want my wife to sleep with another man either. It seems that we do not always get everything we want, Chris said. Remember when we got married, baby? Remember the words love, honor, and cherish. How can having fun with another man be loving, honoring, or sparing me? You make it sound so dirty and disgusting. Josh, aged 13, and his sister, aged 10. Old Kayla appeared visibly discomfited. I'm sorry you had to hear that, Chris said. We both agree that your upbringing should be more mature in the future. However, we have decided to end our marriage. We both still love you and you are not responsible for our decision to divorce. I agree with everything your father said, except that there will be no divorce. Alex said he will not be selfish enough to ruin your life because of something that happened to him. He will not be the one to ruin your life because he is not the one who cheated. How could you cheat on Dad? Kayla wailed. Alex, with a hint of disdain, wrinkled her nose. She first looked at her daughter, then at her husband. Watch your mouth, Kay. I'm still your mother. Alex retorted. Only because I can't divorce you, the girl shot back and ran upstairs to her room. Well, that was nice, Chris commented, addressing no one in particular. I think we should have a family meeting while we eat. Josh went to get his sister so they could talk. As Alex sat and looked at the other 3 members of her family, she observed that they had a frank discussion. A discussion about her infidelity and impending divorce ensued. He informed the children that he was filing for joint custody instead of allowing Alex to retain custody of them. You cannot take my children away from me, Chris asserted. I am prepared to accept that, but I am equally determined not to concede primary custody to you. He continued, it is not acceptable to cheat and assume the role of a father only on weekends. Josh then inquired about the identity of the individual with whom his father was engaging in an extramarital relationship. That is hardly an appropriate question for a young man of your age, Alex replied. The children are of an age to be aware of the truth, regardless of one's preferences. Chris took a few minutes to inform the children of everything he had learned about Trey over the past week. Alex was surprised at how much her husband knew about her lover. He was already in the habit of surprising her, and he was not shy about telling his children what he had learned. Alex spent most of this part of the conversation looking at her plate. There would be no divorce, the children needed to understand that their father was simply being asked to reconsider. In the appropriate manner, Alex stated as she collected the empty plate and glass and proceeded to the kitchen. The children observed Chris, who exhibited a shrug. They were aware of their father's disposition and understood that he would not tolerate infidelity. Upon concluding their meal, the children promptly returned to their respective rooms. However, Josh interjected, "We're available if you require our assistance, Father. We'd prefer to avoid any potential harm or injury. We appreciate your consideration and understanding." "I am grateful for your support and willingness to assist," Chris responded. After dinner, the family typically congregated in the common room to view a film or television program unless the children were occupied with their homework. Alex was seated in the living room, ostensibly reading a book, when Chris retired to the common room to watch a program called Jeopardy! He smiled to himself as he sat down at the table, aware that Alex had not read a book in months while sitting in the living room. Alex held back tears as she contemplated the book's contents, occasionally turning the page. It appears that she was reading approximately 6 hours ago. She had previously believed that she had the ideal life, however, she subsequently realized that her marriage was on the verge of collapse and that her perfect life would be irrevocably altered if she was unable to convey her desires and needs to her husband. Chris portrayed her relationship with Trey as somewhat obscene and unseemly, which is not an accurate representation, according to Alex. Alex's husband is a commendable individual, potentially even a remarkable person, but he is not without shortcomings and vulnerabilities. The presence of Trey in her life as the gaps in their relationship and their sexual intimacy were a manifestation of their love, not a fulfillment of lust. She had kept her relationship with Trey a secret from Chris because she knew her husband would never allow it. Now that he had found out about the relationship, she felt it was no longer a secret. She had considered every detail to keep their relationship a secret, including the fact that their sex life remained similar to before. Trey's presence did not result in a change in the quantity or intensity of their sexual activity. Alex was perplexed by her husband's sudden awareness of their relationship. She had managed to conceal her relationship with Trey for almost a year. She acknowledged that the initial experience of sexual intimacy with Trey had not only aroused her more than ever, but also Trey appeared content with the status of his relationship with Alex, despite her 13-year age difference. She possessed a youthful physique, an attractive appearance, and was intelligent and sociable. He was taken aback by the swiftness with which he had managed to seduce this seemingly contentedly married woman. She made it evident that her intentions extended beyond mere physical intimacy. However, she was not seeking to supplant her husband, which suited Trey perfectly. Who was deriving pleasure from the liberty of being unmarried? The sole stipulation Trey made of her was to extend the duration of their weekly meetings by 1 day. Initially, Alex declined, but after a month, she wholeheartedly concurred, thus inaugurating Alex's Saturday classes. Trey attempted to feign empathy with Alex's circumstances as they convened for lunch at a restaurant in a secluded locale where they occasionally dined. She had contacted the young man to arrange an appointment shortly after she arrived at her office. "If you were to divorce, it would afford us a greater opportunity to socialize. I recognize that this may not be a popular opinion," Trey said, taking a bite out of his sandwich, "but I believe you do not truly desire a divorce. Is it truly necessary for us to separate?" "I hope not. I hope I can persuade him to reconsider." Trey interjected, "He has always been reasonable, and I am confident that he still holds feelings for me. If I can appeal to his sense of justice, I would not relinquish any part of you. He came to understand that maintaining the status quo was a source of happiness for me and did not affect the strength of our relationship." She said, "Until I can convince him, I believe we should take a step back. It might negatively impact the situation if I appear to be overly focused on it." Chris was not surprised when Alex did not attend her practice on Saturday morning. He recognized that she was capable of distancing herself from her relationship with Trey. Nevertheless, he felt compelled to test her limits to assess her response. "You might as well go to your lover, babe. I've already filed for divorce and I'm not going to change my mind," Chris said as he and Alex sat in the common room while their children were outside. "Just because you filed doesn't mean you can't change your mind, honey," she replied. "Do you love me, Chris, and the kids more or less than me?" she asked, quickly. Alex caught him off guard. He could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to find the right answer. "I love you all equally, but in different ways," he replied. "I am aware of that. What is your point?" "My point is that individuals can experience love in varying degrees and forms simultaneously. I love you, the children, and Trey all equally and yet differently. I am unable to relinquish my affection for any of you. I love you, Chris, and I require your presence in my life. You are my husband, and as the father of our children, you can have me most of the time. However, you must also love Trey in a different way and at the same time, just as you do. However, since he is not a part of our family, his role is somewhat limited. In our family, he is obliged to accept a smaller portion of my time, although he would prefer a larger one. He has, however, come to terms with this situation. If you truly loved me as much as you claim, you would accept your dominant role and be happy for yourself and for me. However, you are stubbornly ignoring that it is evident that Trey is not a member of our family, therefore he cannot be loved to the same extent as the children and I. Furthermore, he should not be accorded a minority role within the family structure. Family is what we say it is. Alex stated, I want to include it in ours. I am a good wife and mother, of course you can. If you love me as much as you claim, you will accept the role of minority in our family structure. However, I am unable to comply with your request. I will not allow you to engage in extramarital relationships. Moreover, I must inform you that my love for you has diminished since we last spoke. It is not possible to cease loving someone overnight. However, your disrespect is unacceptable. Over the past year, the intensity of my emotional investment in this relationship has diminished considerably. Chris asserted that he had not disrespected me and that his love for me remained unchanged. Alex countered that Chris's feelings for me were not as strong as his feelings for Trey. Chris then proposed that his relationship with Trey was more than just a casual affair. She responded affirmatively, indicating that she perceived Chris to be a second husband. Despite her assertion that he was a younger husband, Chris was observed on the couch in the common room each night, despite his wife's repeated attempts to return to their bedroom. She commented that they could not converse unless they were in the same bedroom at night. Alex's eyes widened when at their initial meeting with legal counsel, Chris's representative initiated discussions regarding the sale of the marital residence and the distribution of marital assets. Alex expressed disbelief, stating, "You're not serious." He then asserted that a divorce was imminent and that they should prepare for it. He proposed selling the house to afford a more suitable residence. Then a closet, Chris said. All right, you win." Alex practically screamed. "I'll leave him. I promise." "I can't trust your promises. You had no problem breaking our vows." "I don't see why I should trust your promises. You'll figure out a way for me not to catch you next time and cheat behind my back," Chris said. "It's not about winning. You are the one who lost our children. You lost Alex." She lowered her head in shame. "What if I let you have your own boy? Would we be even?" she asked. "You just don't understand, I want what I want. I guess it's just you and me, Chris felt bad when his father, the in-law and mother-in-law called a week later, inquiring as to the reason for the dissolution of their daughter's marriage. He surmised that, as her parents, it was their prerogative to be informed. He had always enjoyed a cordial relationship with Alex's parents, addressing them as Mom and Dad in accordance with the custom he observed with his own parents. "I'm sorry, gentlemen," he said regretfully. "I did not contact you because I assumed Alex would inform you. You are aware of the saying, when you assume, you make an assumption." The father was visibly displeased when Chris informed him and his wife about their daughter's infidelity with Trey. "Are you certain, son, that this does not constitute cheating?" George Taylor inquired, his voice betraying his disquiet. "It is not precisely a case of infidelity," Velma Taylor interjected. "My daughter loves them both and does not desire a divorce." The couple's mouths fell agape in disbelief. George and Velma were visibly shocked and confused. George demanded to know what George knew about the situation. George asserted that Chris was a reliable individual. Velma replied that Chris was a good person and that there was no truth to the allegations. George then asked Velma to clarify the situation. George was adamant that he wanted to know the truth, or else he would be forced to consider a second divorce. The law was apparently aware of Alex's infidelity but continued to assert that it was not a violation of the marital contract because her daughter was in love with both men. However, this rationale does not align with the conventional understanding of infidelity. Velma countered by questioning the distinction between infidelity and polyamory. If this relationship is indeed polyamorous, then why does Velma not have a romantic partner of her own? Moreover, why has she not been informed of these developments? Velma also highlighted a perceived discrepancy in the narrative surrounding her relationship with Chris and her relationship with HEK. She asserted that Chris's mother had accused her of infidelity, yet Velma had not been informed of any such allegations. George expressed regret and asserted that Trey was a decent individual. George asserted that he would recognize Trey's character when they had a chance to interact. Velma stated that she did not wish to meet Trey, as she was reluctant to meet her daughter's romantic partner. She questioned his motives, suggesting that he would not engage in sexual relations with a married woman if he were truly as kind as he appeared. George thanked Velma for her understanding. Trey had initially planned to celebrate his divorce from Alex at the end of the proceedings. However, he was unable to conceal his true feelings, which were far from jubilant. He had sought to spend more time with his personal life, and it seemed that his wish was about to be granted, as Alex and Chris were preparing to finalize their divorce and would be returning their children to him every other week. However, Chris was initially reluctant to allow Alex to see Trey, but after a week of intense emotional distress, she was forced to concede and requested to spend a week with Trey the following time Chris had the children. On that first Monday when Alex stayed overnight, Trey prepared dinner. Dessert was served for the first time since their reunion. Trey had ordered from his preferred Italian restaurant, and everything was prepared when Alex arrived after work. The scene was illuminated by candles, which Trey had thoughtfully arranged. Alex observed that she could become accustomed to being treated in such a manner. Trey proceeded to play her favorite music, classical selections on the stereo for the duration of the meal. She smiled broadly at the young man, noting that her former husband had only been interested in rock music. Her husband's musical preferences were limited to classic rock. She smiled even more broadly when, after the meal was over, he lifted her to her feet and spun her in a slow dance to a few songs. They cleaned themselves up and retired to Trey's bedroom, where they spent the rest of the night having sex, first gently and then more vigorously. Alex was sure that the evening's activities in the bedroom had been one of it was, without a doubt, the best experience of her life. Perhaps the divorce would not be as detrimental as she had initially feared. Trey was overjoyed when he awoke to find himself in Alex's arms. He pressed himself closer to the woman's round posterior and began to rock gently. 20 minutes and one position change later, they were lying face to face, breathing heavily from exertion. "I'm going to be late if I don't hurry," he said. Alex suggested that they save time by showering together. Trey proposed that he raise his eyebrows, which he understood to be an unproductive use of time. Alex replied that he would remain in the room until she was finished and that she would be expeditious. Friday night marked their inaugural public appearance together at a restaurant. Alex was attired in a short red dress that she had purchased for the occasion. He observed. Trey, who found her attractive, observed that she knew she looked sexy. On several occasions throughout the evening, she observed men ogling her. Alex was physically tired when she left Trey's house late Sunday night to pick up the kids from Chris's house. She and Trey had engaged in sexual intercourse on Friday night, 4 times, on Saturday, 2 more times, and on Sunday, 2 more times. Alex was 29 years old. Alex's former partner was significantly more physically demanding than she was accustomed to, a fact that became increasingly evident a month later. She proceeded to the car to pick up the children, a routine that had become customary. While she was sexually satisfied, she felt a growing sense of emotional detachment on the way home. The more time she spent with Trey, the more their relationship seemed to shift from a sexual dynamic to one that was increasingly emotionally strained. She rubbed her right wrist, recalling the scratch she had sustained when Trey had handcuffed her. She was positioned on the headboard of the bed, which represented a novel experience for her. She acknowledged that she felt somewhat devalued, as Trey had forced her into submission when he removed the handcuffs. She expressed reluctance, but he overcame it with remarkable swiftness. She then assumed a position on the bed separately from the younger man, noting that Chris had never made her feel anything other than an equal partner in bed. She mentally brushed the incident aside, deciding that there was probably just a generational difference between her former partner and Trey. Despite the children's awareness of Trey, Alex only interacted with him on a few occasions each week, typically during her work hours. She had not yet introduced Trey to the children. On Wednesday, when Alex called, Trey did not respond to her calls or return her messages. Calls went unanswered. On Thursday at noon, she became concerned and called him on his work phone. The receptionist at Riley Gordon was initially reluctant to discuss Trey's whereabouts. However, upon learning that Alex was Trey's girlfriend and unable to reach him, she provided the necessary information. Trey had been hospitalized since Tuesday night. The other end of the phone indicated that he had been involved in a physical altercation outside his preferred sports bar and sustained significant injuries. This may have been the reason for his unavailability. The receptionist provided Alex with the necessary information, and within minutes, she was en route to the hospital. 15 minutes later, I was examining Trey's severely injured face. I inquired as to why he had not contacted me. Alex, Trey's administrator, informed me that he had been unable to do so due to his injuries. Alex was unable to discern the expression in Trey's eyes due to his injuries, which included a broken nose, 2 black eyes, and 2 broken ribs and bruised testicles. My husband is responsible for this. Trey muttered that the unscrupulous individual did not act alone, but rather hired others to carry out the act. He will face consequences when the police apprehend the perpetrators. However, this outcome is unlikely, as Trey Chris is a respectable individual who would not engage in such behavior. Nevertheless, I had assumed that I could maintain a relationship with 2 men simultaneously. Alex concurred, emphasizing that such a situation would likely not end well. Trey emitted a low growl. He asserted that Trey is, in fact, a coward, not the benevolent individual Alex had assumed him to be. Trey's actions will inevitably result in incarceration. Alex was adamant that she would not treat Trey with any special leniency merely because he is the father of her children. While she was not certain that Trey was the perpetrator, she was nevertheless displeased that Trey had not informed her of the incident immediately, given that Chris had been particularly cold and calculating when he filed for divorce. Her husband was not involved in the assault on Trey. Consequently, she was forced to acknowledge her own role in the incident. "What the hell, Chris? Does your ego feel better now?" she demanded. When he responded to her call later that afternoon, she asked, "What are you yelling for?" He replied, "I'm just trying to understand what's going on." The wife was babbling about "Nice try, Chris. Trey is very angry and hurting badly. When the police apprehend you, you will be incarcerated. I will be unable to calm him down," she said. "Whatever you say," Chris replied and ended the conversation. He was still unable to comprehend the meaning of Alex's exclamation. She acknowledged that Chris appeared perplexed by her statements. She questioned how he had become so adept at feigning innocence. It was ironic that the police arrived at Chris's residence approximately 20 minutes after he had conversed with Alex via telephone. "I had prepared freshly brewed coffee. I had been awaiting your arrival since my former girlfriend called a few minutes ago. Based on her account, it seems that something may have occurred involving her second husband. I am currently considered a primary suspect." Chris stated that he served coffee to both officers and answered their questions for approximately 15 minutes. As they were leaving, the officers agreed that the jilted ex-husband was not a likely suspect. 1 month later, the police ruled Chris out as a suspect in Trey's beating. A few weeks after that, Chris and his father-in-law, the 2 men, were sitting quietly at a bar on the edge of town, enjoying a couple of shots of Angel's NVRY. "Thanks, Dad. I owe you big time," Chris said quietly. "The police were pretty sure I had something to do with beating up that stupid bastard," he continued. "Yeah, you were such an obvious target that they just couldn't ignore you," he added. "But you don't owe me anything. I owe you for what my stupid daughter did to you. You've been a gooder." George Taylor, husband and exemplary father to his grandchildren, stated, "I'll tell you what. You'll have to purchase the drinks from now on." He then proceeded to clink glasses with them and take a sip of the amber liquid. 2 months after the attack on Trey, Alex had not engaged in sexual activity for a considerable period of time. She was experiencing a significant increase in sexual desire and had met another young man with whom she had developed romantic feelings. Alex was not seeking romantic love, she desired physical intimacy. She had recently engaged in sexual intercourse with 2 different men, but she had not had sexual intercourse with either of them for 2 months. Alex was desperate. She considered discussing the issue with Trey, but their relationship was no longer as close as it had been before the attack. Furthermore, Trey had been supportive of his role as the second man in a polyamorous relationship. When she was married to Chris, he was amenable to being the first man in such a relationship, which would provide her with personal peace of mind. She resolved that she would apologize later if necessary, but that she would not be the first to seek permission. Delman Leffler was almost as tall as Trey, 5 feet 9 inches, and weighed 98 pounds. He appeared to be slightly more physically attractive than Trey, though not quite as rugged. He had grown up in New Orleans and had a combination of Cajun and old-fashioned Southern accent. He has a Southern accent and is 25 years old. He is more polite than Trey but less brash. He works as a junior manager at a local firm. Since meeting him in line at Starbucks a few months ago, Alex has wondered if he could replace her ex. The husband in the new polyamorous trio decided it was time to ascertain this information. By the time Trey had regained the physical ability to engage in sexual intercourse, Delman was firmly in his former role as Alex's second husband. Alex met with her second boyfriend twice a week during the weeks when she had children. Those children were old enough to care for themselves for the few hours she was not home on Wednesday nights and Saturday mornings, as she had done when she was married. It was also of the utmost importance that Trey was not privy to any further information regarding Delman than Chris was aware of Trey. At least, this was the case until such time as he became aware of it. Alex highlighted that the only instances where Chris and Alex's lives crossed paths were when the parents handed the children over to each other as part of their custody agreement and at certain school events. During these occasions, Chris was cordial with Alex, whereas Alex was constantly attempting to gain favor with her ex-husband. The children informed Chris that his former spouse was his current husband's wife. Approximately 6 months after the fact, the wife had returned to a polyamorous life. Josh and Kayla had mentioned in passing that they often did early Saturday chores around the house while their mother was at the gym. They intended to spend the rest of the day with friends, away from her. Regardless of her actions, she remained their mother. Chris advised that respect and consideration were essential. He acknowledged that his son's assessment of the situation was correct. However, he was prompted to reconsider his position. He was pensive, pondering the information that his former spouse was once again disclosing to the children, namely that she frequented the gym on Saturday mornings. Chris had never explicitly informed the children about the circumstances surrounding their mother's infidelity. As they were of a similar age, they had never inquired about it. He postponed discussing this topic until the following week when the children were at Alex's residence. He borrowed a friend's vehicle and parked it a block away from Alex's house, carrying 2 Dunkin' Donuts and a cup of coffee. She was already visibly distressed, recalling the morning with Delman, and was unaware that she was being observed. He observed Alex park the vehicle on the street outside the house, which was divided into 2 apartments. He noted the address on a piece of paper while consuming a second Bavarian cream donut and then looked up just in time to see a large, bare-chested young man in only gym shorts greeting his ex at the door with a tender kiss on the lips. She appeared to be particularly fond of a larger and younger man, Chris observed. He then proceeded to call the young man's name, pressed a few buttons on his phone, and obtained additional information. He was pleased with the outcome and proceeded to share his findings with a smile. "Google," he said. Trey was unfamiliar with the caller ID number that appeared on his phone. He contemplated redirecting the call to voicemail but ultimately decided to answer it. "Trey, how can I be of assistance?" He proceeded to introduce himself and inquire as to the caller's intentions. Trey responded with a growled, "It is rather late for an apology, is it not?" Chris replied that he had no obligation to apologize, but for his own selfish reasons, he would be willing to grant the caller a favor. Trey then inquired as to the caller's knowledge of the whereabouts of the caller's former romantic interest. "You do," Trey snapped. "Isn't she with your children?" "She is with a child, but not mine." "She is undoubtedly with her preferred type." "He is a large man, probably the same height as you, but slightly younger." "If she persists in this behavior, she will be dating sperm in a few years." Chris grinned. "Let's say A. Believe me, who is the bastard?" Trey inquired. According to Google, he resides at 1234 William Street. The remainder of the information can be obtained through independent research. "I'm out of coffee," Chris stated. Upon entering Trey's residence on Monday, Alex was immediately confronted by Trey. This interaction was not identical to previous ones. Literally, but figuratively, what the hell, Alex? Trey yelled. How long has this been going on? He continued, I already told you I'd never share. He then added, don't you think you're a little hypocritical? The woman responded with a grin. It was fine for you to interfere in my marriage to my husband, she said, but now that you've become my number one, you don't want anyone interfering in your marriage. She then added, we've been together for months. It started when you were incapacitated. I have feelings for him, just like you. She then asked, if your husband, the one who was really married to you, left you because of this, what makes you think I would stay with you? I am not going to stay with you because of that kind of disrespect. Trey asked, you're certainly a great Alex, but no woman is worth that much. I should have no problem replacing you, but you love me. You said you did. The woman shrieked, apparently not enough. He replied, too. In the weeks that followed, Trey was standing at the urinal in his office when he was overcome by a sudden, intense pain. He was overcome with the conviction that he was experiencing the effects of an intense emotional attachment, akin to a sexually transmitted disease. Trey then proceeded to call the doctor, requesting an appointment. The doctor instructed Trey to report for treatment immediately after administering an injection and writing a prescription. The doctor's nurse returned with a notebook and pen and requested the names and phone numbers of all Trey's sexual partners in the previous 2 months. Trey provided the nurse with one name, Alexis Temple. The nurse then inquired whether Temple had engaged in sexual activity with anyone else during the same period. Trey blushed before answering in the affirmative, stating that Temple had a second boyfriend, Delman LaFleur, and that she may also be having an affair with her ex-husband. Husband Chris, I am uncertain about that. I simply have a feeling that Alex's stomach twisted when she received the call from the county medical center the following day. It appeared that she was engaged in an illicit relationship, in violation of the rules and without the use of a condom. Trey is likely to be extremely displeased, she thought to herself. Alex was embarrassed when she had to give the nurse on the other end of the line, then proceeded to inquire as to whether there were any other individuals involved. This inquiry was perceived by Alex as somewhat presumptuous, particularly given the circumstances. She then clarified that there were no other individuals involved. The following day, Trey was contacted via telephone. Chris Temple had ostensibly called to return a favor that Chris had done for him a few weeks earlier. Chris is my only woman, so I know it's from her. You don't dip your wick in her from time to time, do you? Chris stated with disdain, it is not surprising that he has remained unmarried for 8 years. He had assumed that he would never marry again, and this arrangement suited him well. He did not seek a partner. After his usual Friday night workout at the local YMCA, he stopped at the vending machine for a Gatorade. The woman standing in front of him at the machine did not appear to realize he was waiting. She stood there as if she had all day. Finally, he coughed, causing the woman to jump with surprise and turn toward him quickly, looking him over from head to toe. Chris observed that she was Asian with long black hair tied back in a ponytail. She was dressed in what he considered to be attractive workout clothes, a tight burgundy top and matching yoga pants. He thought very few women looked good in yoga pants, but this woman was one of the few. She was of Asian descent with long black hair tied back in a ponytail. She was clothed in what he considered to be attractive workout attire, a tight burgundy top and matching yoga pants. He considered that few women looked well in yoga pants, but this woman was one of the few who did. He muttered pathetically, though. The woman smiled brightly at him, her big brown eyes reflecting the smile on her lips. He was struck by the effectiveness of her opening line. It seemed to him that she was imitating the style of a bestseller, How to Woo Girls for Dummies. He was taken aback by her response and raised both hands in surrender. He had not anticipated such a harsh response from a woman of 40. The woman was approximately 40 years of age. The woman was, in fact, an older soccer mom, but this detail was not meant to be taken seriously. She expressed regret and apologized, recognizing that Chris was not attempting to pursue a romantic interest in her. This realization occurred at approximately the same time that Chris's awareness shifted from playful interaction to a more serious perspective. He realized that he was as much attracted to this woman as any other man would be in the same situation. Other man gotcha, he said. The dumb guy role always works with smart women. You girls just can't resist rubbing a guy's nose in it. I believe that, she said, smiling slightly. Let's say I believe that, she said, laughing. I'm Jade, and you're Chris Temple. I'd really appreciate it if you'd make your... He stated that he needed Gatorade. 1 year later, they were married in a small ceremony. Chris admired her sharp mind and quick tongue as much as her firm body. He learned that she was 51 years old, not 40 as he had originally assumed, and that she had divorced her cheating husband about 10 years ago. She shared Chris's views completely. I don't share my man, she said. I will never do the two loves thing. You are my one and only love, and that has to work both ways.